Let me just say first off that the reason why I do what I do is I've managed through my own process to recapture the ability to think for myself. And that's like the first thing they strip from us, by the way. I mean, literally, that's like they strip that shit right away. And they basically get us to regurgitate a bunch of trivial pursuit questions on command. And if you do that really well enough, then you get to go to university and then you get to regurgitate slightly more complex trivial pursuit questions. And if you do that on command well enough and you jump through this hoop and do that backflip and so on and so forth, then you get the job, you make the money, and then you live the so-called American dream. And the way I see it is it's pretty much all programming. I don't care what anybody says, there's a lot of programming in most of us, and very few of us have the ability to actually shed that stuff and start really thinking for ourselves. But when you do, boy, oh boy, does it revolutionize the way you see the world. And, it's a normal process for most of us when we start actually seeing things as they are to feel very alone, very isolated. Many people get depressed, they look at the masses who, are you kidding me? Do people actually believe this nonsense? And it all seems very depressing, but I don't know, I managed to stumble on some things that really helped me along the way. And one of them was the understanding that we are all of us, not just human beings, but all life. We are all brothers and sisters in a family of life. We all have a common fate. We live on planet Earth. What's good for the Earth is good for us. What's bad for the Earth is bad for us. There's just no way to break that. I mean, you may profit financially from doing something bad for the Earth, but have you really gained? Well, the only way that you could possibly have gained is if you believe that you live detached, disconnected from the rest, and that somehow you can derive benefit at someone else's expense. When you understand the truth, from my perspective, understanding that we are all connected, what is good for you is good for me, and there's no way around that. I don't care how clever you are. In truth, your cleverness is your stupidity. You think that you can manage to obtain some real benefit off of exploiting somebody else's weakness. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And I don't care how smart you are, the fact is that if you have harmed others for your own perceived personal benefit, you have screwed yourself. And you have not helped the planet or the greater good. And we've been conned into this. I say that, and I suppose that's probably the good segue into some of the more controversial things, the things that we're not supposed to be able to talk about, which to me is a big red flag to say that's what you're supposed to talk about, these things that we're not allowed to talk about. I don't know the quote word for word, but I'm sure many of you know it. Voltaire, you want to know where the power is, find out who you can't criticize. Well, if there's one group on this planet that you really can't criticize, it's pretty damn obvious. I'm sure everybody's just waiting for that word to come out. But before I even say the word and start getting into this subject, I'm going to repeat again, and I'll repeat as many times as is necessary. Everybody on this planet, including non-humans for that matter, but certainly my human brothers and sisters, are in fact brothers and sisters. And I actually want what's best for all of my brothers and sisters. And I see two populations on this planet who are being set up for a major, major fall. Major, major fall. The parallels I see between these two groups could hardly be any more obvious, in my opinion. And that is the Jewish people and the American people. And we both, in my opinion, also have another thing in common, and that is we are like sheep being led to slaughter. Because those who are running the world don't give a shit about Jewish people or the American people. And some, especially the real anti-Jews, the real ones who hate Jews and all that, the so-called anti-Semites, which is a ridiculous term, a perversion of language and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, the Jewish people have been benefiting from this system. We've been benefiting from this system, and we are both being led down a path which is purely self-destructive, and the writing is well on the wall. If you can't see this, well, I don't know, everybody in this audience probably sees it to one degree or another, but we are, unfortunately, as a species, very crisis-driven. It appears as if we need a crisis before we start to really do something meaningful, and it doesn't seem very wise to me. we are being led down a path which is our own undoing. And I don't have any doubt whatsoever that the American nation, the people of this nation, are going to be living like a third world nation, big time, especially once one very simple thing changes, and that's the petrodollar system. Everything that you're enjoying right now, it was slightly different before 1973, but everything that we're enjoying right now is based on a perverse system known as the petrodollar system, tied into the central banks and so on and so forth. And that system isn't going to be around much longer. I'm telling you, when oil is no longer traded exclusively in dollars, everything that, as bad as it is now, boy, oh boy, is it going to get really bad. Especially when that first domino falls and the rest of the world says, fuck America, we've been dealing with their shit for a long time. And you name a country that hasn't been dealing with this shit, we've got bases practically in every nation of the world, And people have been sucking this shit system force-fed to them by America. And I'll tell you, the sympathy and the love and all these things that people had for America, having lived outside of America for many years now, it ain't there. So people ain't going to be crying extra tears for America when it descends into chaos. And where do you think the bastards who are running this world are going to be? Do you think they're going to be, living amongst the population suffering? Of course not. If you ask me, there's a saying, every empire falls, if you ask me, actually, I don't believe any of them actually fell. The people within those empires that benefited from that imperial system, yeah, they fall, they have a real problem. But if you ask me, those who are actually running the imperial system, they just morph into something else. So, it was the British Empire before us. What's the difference, really, between the British Empire and the American Empire? I mean, it's all basically the same thing. It really is. And so America can be sacrificed because those bastards who are running this system, they have control of the things that matter for them to be able to morph into something else. And there's tons of research and evidence and documents that make clear what we're seeing in the Middle East right now. This is not an accident. What's happening in the Middle East is not like, oh, that's really unfortunate, wow, it seems like a failed policy. It's not failed policy. It's very well intentional. And if we wanted to pay attention to things that are in the public record, we would know that. And if we cared about other people as much as we should care about other people, as if they were our brothers and sisters, we wouldn't have allowed this shit to happen. But we have. And now we are confronting a situation in which everything that we become used to, the kind of comfort level that we're used to. I had somebody say the other night, you're making me really uncomfortable. Good. If you came here to be comfortable, then I hope to disappoint you. I think comfort is part of our problem. The more comfortable we are, it's amazing how directly proportionate comfort is to stupidity or willful ignorance. Some of the dumbest people on the planet are Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Stanford graduates, willfully ignorant because they know enough to know that if they speak the truth about a number of subjects, it ain't good for their career. And Syria is such a stark example. But you know what their response to that was? And you have to give them credit, I have to say. You have to give the motherfuckers credit, man. I tell you, they come up with some good shit. They created ISIS. Well, that's pretty good, man. Pretty good. Rehash, rebrand that whole Al-Qaeda thing. And that's all it is. It's a rebranding of the same bullshit. And it's so transparent and obvious. And in the immediate, they got quite a bit of traction. They have. But I think ISIS, Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, on the back end is something really remarkable. In 2001, how many people knew what a false flag was? Think about it. How many people knew what a false flag was? This is a tactic they've used throughout history for millennia. It's not just recent. I mean, it's something that's been used for millennia. And it's very effective. In fact, it is the most effective tactic for manipulating people into war. And you have to understand, if you're trying to understand the world, one thing you have to do is, if you are even halfway sane a human being, you need to get out of that perspective, okay? Just remove yourself from any kind of sanity or humanity. Like, get out of that space. The space you need to get into is the space of a psychopath and a sociopath. No empathy whatsoever, completely drunk on power, willing to do anything and everything to elevate yourself and your position of power. That is the kind of mental space you need to get into if you want to understand the way things work. And if you look at it that way, you have to understand that those who are effectively running the world primarily through the financial system, that's what they are. They're psychopaths, sociopaths. Many of them are pedophiles, if not all of them. And many of them are involved in things as nasty and sadistic and untouchable as things like fucking little boys and little girls before they sacrifice them. These are things that are happening. And the evidence to support this kind of stuff is overwhelming. And if you really want to go into a rabbit hole, go ahead and start exploring that stuff. Because I'll tell you what, it's there. And this is the kind of thing that these people do, if they're even people, for that matter. I really don't even know. I mean, if they actually are human beings, they've lost all their humanity. So in that sense, they're not people. They are not human beings. These individuals do not give a shit, and they will do anything. And what they're experiencing right now is very troubling. Very troubling indeed, because what we are experiencing right now at this point in history is a rising of the human consciousness that's never happened in recorded history. We don't know of any period in human history where so many people are becoming more and more aware, recapturing the ability to think for themselves and actually becoming human beings. And one of the basic attributes of being a human being, especially as a parent, is concern for your children. And while you may feel that you have the strength and ability to deal with the kind of draconian bullshit that is being thrust upon us, such as mandatory vaccines, I think that's great. Excellent. Good stuff. Bring on the mandatory vaccines and all that kind of shit, because if that's not going to engage people, I don't know what is. No, you have to inject your children with fucking poison. And if you don't, we're going to throw you in jail. Good. Excellent. Get a taste of what it is for much of the world who are dealing with things not only like that, but worse than that. The Palestinians are a good place to go. Put yourself in the place of a Palestinian. That mandatory vaccine shit is a day at Disneyland compared to what they're dealing with. So I'm happy for us in the West, in our comfortable little space, to start to explore discomfort on a real level and experience real injustice to the point where your children are being ordered. You're being ordered to poison your children. We are experiencing a rising of the consciousness of humanity that is so profound and so unparalleled that it is scaring the shit out of the powers that be. And to be honest, they know damn well they're living on borrowed time. Literally, they're living on borrowed time. And what they need, and what they've always loved anyway, is war. War is good. From the psychopath, sociopathic, pedophile, corrupt, nasty, drunk on their own power perspective, war is fucking beautiful. It's wonderful, man. It's like an orgy of, sexual, orgasmic, kind of pleasure for them. Because as a tyrant, a tiny group of individuals, a club, a tiny little club, less than 1%, in order for a tiny percent of the population to control the masses, you will need a couple of things. One of them they violated big time, but the first thing is division. You must keep the people divided.